Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This
East.
is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summit.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey guys, this is Jeff Adamec from the Changing Hearts and Minds podcast and podcast 1289. Check us out at all the podcast aggregators. Search Change Your POV for Changing Hearts and Minds. I am the Wednesday show, and just search podcast 1289. You'll find us. I am here on the Break It Down show.
And now, the Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Yeah, so we have Jeff on the show. Jeff is a former, normally if I was being kind of funny, I would say a former action guy, a fag. But in this case, I'm just going to call you Jeff a friend. He's a former 18 Bravo, which is the weapons expert, the guy that everybody on the team tries to outshoot. And those guys always have an extra thing. So we've had a lot of SF guys on the program. I'm trying to think. Nate Boyer has been on. Mikey Bee has been on. Yeah, and also Michael. His name escapes me right now. But he went the State Department route, so he was like the warrior diplomat. I'll have to look and see. Anyhow, we've had a bunch of these guys on, and the reason why I bring them on is because you guys are the alphas of the alphas, and it's incredible the amount of work and professionalism you guys display on a day in, day out basis. I mean, yes, you guys know how to party, and yes, you guys are a lot of fun, but the reason why you get to do the things you guys do is that you go and do impossible things. Like talking to Mikey Bee, we were trying to figure out, and I won't put this on you because I didn't want to put it on Mikey either, but an ODA, a SEAL team, whatever, you guys are often pushed way far out from the conventional army. Sometimes you live with them, but a lot of times it's on the side of a mountain. And when you're in a place like Afghanistan, in the unit I was with, it was with an infantry platoon. And maybe it was a heavy platoon, a couple extra guys around. But you can't bite off more than you can chew because there ain't no help coming. So, there's helicopters, there's jets up top, but they all have things to do. And if you're fifth on the list, so you think about this audience, like out in a valley in Afghanistan, they have every form of rock. They've got big, huge rocks, tiny pea gravel, sand, everything, and it all can be within 10 feet of each other. So moving in that space is super hard, and you're at altitude, and it's hot. So when you go out, if the enemy decides to bite off a hunk of you and take a fight, if you're there fighting for 45 minutes, which can be an eternity or it can be a fast fight, kind of depends, you can't count on a whole lot of help coming. So you have to find ways of doing it. Now, Jeff and his friends, high level of skill, but you can maybe let's say you can carry 500 rounds of ammo. That's a lot. And every bit of that ammo makes it harder to move, and you have to not bring something else. So everything's about sacrifices when you're on a combat patrol. So I was just trying to give the audience some frame of reference on not only do you guys go out and teach and train the indigenous forces, which is an impossible task because those guys are it's like juggling water. And you can kind of do it, but God dang, it's hard. And everybody wants to do a good job, but what a good job is and what everybody expects, those are different things. Talk a little bit about how do you manage expectations of, say, the bigger part of the Army machine when the reality on the ground is dramatically different with what you've got to work with?
Oh, God, that's a good question. First of all, I tell people a lot of times that trying to train indigenous forces in another country, for those of you who are parents, is like trying to get your kid to clean under their bed and want to do it. It's almost damn near impossible. You may get them to do it this time because you're standing over top of them, but the key is getting them to do it because they want to, and you know that they don't. So that's what a lot of it's like. And managing expectations, I think you can't we all like to feel like we're the ones who are affecting the most in our battle space. That we have to feel that, but we also have to understand that we are nothing more, no matter how much of our mission or our job or that specific, task that we're on is important right now, is still just a smaller part of a bigger purpose. And much like the regular Army is there to fill its purpose of being the shock and awe and the face of the U.S. military, we are there to be the face of the U.S. foreign policy and the U.S. people themselves. I mean, we spoke about it before in a different, not here, but I'll mention it again. We are given national command authority. We can speak on behalf of the president, which is why what we do is so important. because we have that ability. We have that command authority given to us, that it's everything we say is just as important as everything we do. And I think that's something that makes us different, because there's a maturity level that goes along with, we can't just kick everyone's ass. We have to build these relationships and win this for the long term. And we're strategically thinking all the time, not just tactically.
Yeah, you have to think strategically, and then the tactics. This is kind of saying the same thing, but in a way that helps people understand. And I do this a lot with corporations when I talk to them. Is you have a strategic goal, you have a vision, you have a doctrinal goal, a theoretical outcome, but then you have to line your operations and your tactics up with those things, and then those things have to actually match what's possible on the ground. And a great example of getting your kid to clean up under the bed. The other thing is when you go out there, the indigenous force, they want to be badasses.
And to have those kids not just clean, but want to clean their bed, because we walk away. And if they don't want to keep doing what they're doing, they're just going to do whatever. And we lose everything we've gained. So getting people to not just do what we want them to do, but to realize the benefit and want to do it. And that's why it's.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, there's a good distinction there. And they want to be kind of on their end, they want to be badasses. They want to have like that pride, and they want to be like the Green Berets that they see. But day to day, you got to clean your bed to get there. And then, the other thing is there's so much noise in all of that, where let's say the sergeant major, and I'm just going to pick on sergeant majors because they can take it, but they like, why don't you do sand tables? Like, well, because sergeant major, we never do them, and they're with us every day. And so if we're not doing them, why are we making them do them? Because they want to be like us. So it doesn't mean you don't teach them the drill of practicing and planning, but you also have to understand, like my favorite thing is, Jeff, is to talk about like, oh, we're teaching these guys curve line distance on a map. Like, when was the last time you used that in combat?
When was the last time they looked at a map?
What about us? Like, you when we go on a patrol, right, we're like, we know the area. These guys are from the area. We don't need to do a sand table. It may be for a specific thing, but it's always done for a different reason. So we waste our time teaching these guys this. And then the next team comes in, and they're like, all right, here we are. So you do a sand table. And they teach the same thing.
Right. And that's something that I think is not a big problem, but that's a big challenge, is every single team that comes in wants to immediately put their impact and their mission and what their commanders have told them is their mission into the forefront. But for the last 6 months, these guys have been getting told that the last commander's mission was the most important thing. And it may be the same. Very often it's different. And if you've ever, it's like it's with your kids. Everyone's experienced what an SF or a tier 1 guy has experienced. Your kids are getting mommy and daddy. Mommy wants the bathroom clean. Daddy wants the kids to put their shoes away. They don't want them right at the front door. Both of them make them think that that's the most important thing. So they never get a clear, concise, and they're not, forgive me for saying this, they're bright, they're street smart, but they're not the most educated people in the world. They're confused. They've got these foreigners in their land who they respect, but are telling them that they need to do what they say. And they don't know what the real mission is for them. They just know what their end state they want. They want to be free, or they want to have control of the country. But are they willing to work for it? Are they willing to do the hard things? Because they don't believe you. You're just an imperialistic American who's here to frigging take their oil or kick some ass. And they really believe that. And you've got to win them over. And winning them over is so much harder than just getting them to think you're a badass. That's easy. You show up with all that gear and all the technology, you're a badass. Now get them to want to listen to you and to respect you and to believe you when you tell them that their interests are your interests. And that's the hard part. It's massively difficult. It's almost impossible.
What we're trying to do and yes, we've been in a conflict for 15 plus years now in Iraq. It keeps going in Afghanistan as well. But also understand that these places don't have fire stations. This is a great story. So Jeff, I'm in the brigade headquarters, and they've got a high level State Department guy there, and we're having this high level meeting with everybody in there. Makes well over $100,000 a year, and I come walking in from the field, so I'm all dirty, but I've got respect of those guys, and they're like, hey, we're talking about Valley 15, and we're trying to figure out. They're not taking a shot at me, but they definitely are challenging me. They say, what's the number one TV channel that they're watching out there? What do you think? And that's a really pointed and hard question in a room full of people that are colonels and higher. And I say, well, that's real simple. There's no electricity.
Especially when the answer is Playboy channel.
Well, in this case, it was even better. I'm like,
especially when the Playboy channel is the answer, but that's not the answer they want. That's unfortunately the answer that's the truth, though. So you got to gauge
but
it.
the actual answer
ahead.
in this case is, that's real easy. In Valley 15, there's no electricity. They don't have TV. And it changes completely their reality in the room. And they're like, God, we were all assuming that everybody there was hooked into stuff. And so whatever you think reality is, it's way different.
Would you just come from Iraq, sir? That's what I would ask him right away. Did you just come from Iraq? Because you know it, I know it, and hopefully your listeners will now know it. Iraq and Afghanistan are two completely different countries. There is nothing, in my opinion, that is similar about them at all. You're talking about the difference between, indigenous forces in the hinterlands of mountains compared to generally built up, second world, if not lower class first world, city living. And that it's a massive difference between those two cultures and the two environments that you're in.
I learned a lot about shutting up and listening and understanding what these guys go through on a day-to-day basis. Like, and this is an evolved point of view, I have to say, because it took me a long time to figure it out. And it directly relates to like our police problem. Everybody says, well, the police need to do more training, and that's likely true. The training guy for that police department, he's not going, I wish I had something to do. That guy's maxed out on what he's got available. He's using all of the money he has. Right. And the guy who's the watch commander, he's not going, I just got like 25 extra guys sitting around doing nothing. Everybody is working hard. So same thing with these villagers. They're all maxed out on trying to survive. And we're asking them to do a skill that's above survival level, and they don't have time for that. Say it again.
They're wanting to survive to begin with they're wanting to survive to begin with before you even get up and do your work tasks. Their whole thing in life is, how do I live to the end of the week? How do I take care of myself and my family on the kind of money that would make people who are poor in America look like friggin' millionaires? And then you have that line, like you said, they need more training. Well, you know what? Did you need more training? Because I did. Everyone needs more training. Why don't you give me a better statement that is more full of actual thought and critical thinking than some classic, everyone needs more training. Well, if every marathon runner knows he's got to run more, that doesn't help. Well, how do you get to that point where you're going to be successful or accomplish what you're doing? Not give me some bullshit, and pardon me, but some bullshit canned answer. They need more training. We need more supplies. We need more intel. Yeah, no shit. That's friggin' Sun Tzu. Friggin' that. He didn't even put that in The Art of War, because that's just assumed. Everyone knows that. Tell me something that's poignant, something that's going to help. And that's the thing. I used to always laugh at those guys in those meetings. You could tell them, you can be like, this guy's never stepped foot outside of this office when he's come to this country, and he's only been to this country to have this meeting. And he's going to go back to the State Department or go back to some mid-level friggin' base in the, outside of the combat zone. And he's going to pass judgment on everything that's going on here, knowing nothing about what he's talking about, because somebody won't tell him he's wrong.
That's a big point, is understanding that you're likely wrong. You want to create this new reality for them, but what's their current reality? Like we have agricultural teams, and I'm hard on these guys because they deserve it, but they'll come in and they'll say, we're going to change we're going to create co-ops, and we're going to build these buildings. And so we imagine this. Let's say Jeff lives in North Carolina. So someone comes down to the part of North Carolina where you live, and a foreign government starts building buildings in open land in North Carolina, saying, we're going to improve your ability to X. People would lose their minds. They'd guarantee you they'd grab guns in North Carolina and be like, get the hell out of here.
Fort Bragg would not be a good place to do it.
Right?
Yeah. We're like the worst place in the world you could try to come and set up an insurgency like that. But yes, you come into a country, you tell the local population who have their daily lives, their daily cares, what they care about, what's important to them. And you tell them that what's important to them now is something that they never even considered, something that they don't care about. And then you expect them to just jump and act like every other military person, every other government employee. And that's where the difference between who we are and what the regular government or military is that we're not trained, SF guys, Special Force guys specifically, to look at it from the eyes of a standardized yes man military. I'll do what you're told. We're taught to think outside the box. We're taught to look at it from their point of view, to go native, if you will. We're told that we have to balance what is important to them with what is strategically important to the United States goals and what America cares about. We have to have both in there, because we can't get anything done at the levels that we're doing if we start negating either one of those. If you fail to uphold American, what they want, then we're failing at our job as a military person. If we do not care about the local populace, then we're not building hearts and minds. We're not building bridges. We're not helping them evolve into the people that are going to do it willingly or do it because they have the same mindset as us. We may be the kind of people who go out and tell everyone they should think like us, but I'm going to say it. It's only because the way we think has afforded us to become the greatest country in the history of the world. And I'm sorry if that sounds arrogant, but it's true. We had a horrible country to begin with. Slavery, women couldn't vote. Everyone looked past that at those times because of what we were accomplishing as a nation that was building liberty and freedom. Everyone needs to remember that trying to make people America, we're just trying to show people how if you care about your freedoms, if you care about yourself and your families and fight for what you believe in and compromise sometimes when you have to, that you can live a full life without having to worry about where am I getting my water from? When is this person going to kill my wife for reading a book? When is having to grow a beard going to be a detriment to my, these things are horrible things that happen to people, but we can show them how not to do it. We just have to remember that we have to re-educate them, and not in a manner that is brainwashing, but re-educate them because we have to show them there is better ways.
So this is where I made a lot of my money as a collector, was coming in with these kind of things. So I'll give you an example, and I'll tell the story backwards because that it makes more sense. But we always want to teach and train the local populace, especially the kids, especially in Afghanistan, because that's not a given like it is in Iraq as often. So what do? Well, we get books, we get workbooks. They're all in the right language and all that kind of thing, and we hand them out to kids. We put them in our backpacks and go out and go, every kid gets a book. Here you go, motherfucker. And everybody gets a book. Well, that's the big army way of doing it, and it's dumb because no one ever comes back and says, hey, what did you learn how to do? Did you learn how to read? How did this radio program? They don't go ask. So that's one of the things I do. So that way is a way to approach that problem, is just to dump books into an environment and hope for the best and never ask if it worked. That's one way. I was working also with a bunch of group guys, and they said, hey, you and your buddy Rich are really good at getting information. We've heard a lot about it. Can you help us figure out the best way to get these books out into the community? That different point of view got the Afghans in a room with us, with people that no one else commonly ever met with. We met new people all the time, Rich and I did, because we approached our problems differently. And the outcome of that was the Ministry of Education guy engaging with us and saying, one, I have a program and I would like to use it. Here it is. And he laid out the program. Two, I'd like your help in these specific areas, which are things that no one on the American side even thought to ask or do. And he also said, under no uncertain terms, never, ever, ever deliver the books directly to the kids. And when the Ministry of Education guy is saying this, he's got a religious leader in the room that they chose to bring and a couple of family leaders, and they're all nodding their head, yes, never, ever, ever bring kids books directly, and do not ever bring them to me. I will come to you and get them. I will let you figure out with me how to best get them out. I would love to use the radio to track who's doing what, but these are the things you cannot do. So two different approaches. One was much more specific, took us weeks to get these answers. And then we wrote the report and said, under no circumstances ever give books to the Afghans directly, never give them to the kids and all that. And so Ann Smedjinghoff and the State Department are out and about on a photo op, not even really doing anything, and they take books to go give them out to kids, and they get whacked, and she's dead, and a bunch of people get blown up. They had the report already.
Was it female giving out books to kids?
Yeah, female giving out books to kids, and really, honestly, what it was is the State Department lied about that. They actually weren't giving out books, but that was the story they told. But the thing is when they tell that story, the people from the State Department had a 6-month-old report, which means those people were there and read that report, and they chose to ignore the ground truth in terms of what they wanted to say. And you and I both know there's all kinds of times where, hey, we got to go out and get this photo op so we can show that we're doing good things. Meanwhile, not one person in the State Department.
You have to stage it in a safe environment.
Yeah. If we're going to stage this, let's do it.
You and I both know, and I think that they would be smart enough to realize that you don't go into a country where women were subjugated and not allowed to learn, and you have a State Department American female hand out books. You're affronting even the basic non-malicious Afghan email with that activity. He's going to now look the other way when the Taliban's like, well, we'll just off them. There's multiple cultural, completely don't pay attention to the cultural landscape. that's involved in that. Beyond just what you say, the rules that were laid out, but just cultural. It's almost like it's an arrogance that you're like, look, you're doing this because you want to prove something. This is not the place or time. This is not the culture to do that in. We have to get them to listen to us, and not to just do it because we know better.
And it gets worse because they had the report and they chose to ignore it. And then you look at what that does with the Ministry of Education person. It's like, yeah, we've been down this road. You guys always go crawfish on what you say you're going to do. So I'm just going to do what I want to do, which is nothing to do with what anybody else wants. Because he's trying to juggle water. And we're like hitting him in the face with the fire hose while he's trying to juggle water. And he's like, you know what? No, thanks. I don't want to play this game. I'm going to take my paycheck. I'm going to focus on surviving and get away from you guys. And this is, and we're illustrating this to show just how hard all of this conflict stuff is, which brings up the question, Jeff, should we even be doing this stuff?
We should be doing this stuff. We should have been doing this stuff for years beforehand. And not what I don't mean going into countries, taking over and reestablishing governments, but what I mean is we should be out there engaging with friggin' these cultures and with these here's the thing. I met, not to disclose anything, I met a guy who is a hardcore terrorist. I was part of a team of people that was on the mission that detained him. I got to battlefield interrogate him, long-term interrogate him. And at the end of it all, he turned to me the last day I saw him, and he spoke very good English. And he said to me, he goes, Jeff, where were you 20 years ago? We would never be fighting against each other. That's the words he said to me. And I turned to him and I said, well, I see what you're saying, but this is the situation we're in because... And he goes, no, we're in this situation because we don't understand each other, because we spent so much time being told not interacting with each other to realize that we're all human beings, that we don't ever take that. Listen, racists in the world, every racist I've ever met has all said, well, I know this one black guy, I really like him though, because he knows him, right? But then he hates every other black person in the world. Racist, friggin' the worst thing in the world to me, next to pedophiles, because all you're doing is saying that you don't have any kind of personal relationships with anything outside your comfort zone. And that's where our problem began years ago, is the lines that are drawn between cultures that we do not bypass. We learned years after the Cold War ended that us and the Russian people were very much alike, and that they were just as afraid of being told by their governments that the Americans were the bad guys as we were being told the Russians were the bad guys. Are there bad guys in the government in Russia? Absolutely. Are there bad guys in the government in the United States? Absolutely. Nobody's perfect, and every single person is generally the same. And interpersonal relationships are so much more important. Movies are terrible for being real, but one thing they get right is you always see these two opposing forces where there's these two guys that are friends with each other, right? The Peacemaker, where the whole thing was the CIA agent and the Russian KGB agent are in the back trying to keep everything from going off kilter because they're friends with each other. This is where those things come into play. We had no interpersonal relationships with anyone inside these countries for years. Saddam Hussein was our friend. He apologized before he was hung to the friggin' interrogators because he said, I made a mistake by not telling you I was doing this to prevent Iran from invading my country. But how many lives would have been saved if we just would have talked to each other? One person we had an interpersonal relationship with, Mossad, was the guy who friggin' predicted 9/11 months before it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's about the getting outside of whatever our cultural blinders and realizing, as you know this, I know this, and anyone that's deployed knows this. Americans, and guys, if you're never been outside the United States, you're not going to like this, but you have no idea what the real world is like. It is not the world you've been fed. America is a frigging dream, and it is very different from just go across the Mexican border. It's a completely different world, and that's right next door. Now go all the way across the globe to Afghanistan and tell that person that they need to read this book. Well, he's been told by his religious leader he's not allowed to read. So what do I do? Listen to you or listen to my God? Oh, you're here to tell me that the Christian God is nice, but that the Muslim God is bad. Well, I'm a Muslim. You're telling a Muslim person that their God is bad. This guy's never picked up on. I'm just saying there's all these kinds of miscues and these misunderstandings that are all based on the fact that we just get stuck in our own little thing, and we only care about what's important to us as individuals.
I want to take a little bit of time too and kind of expand on that, because so everybody says the word culture, and they talk about emotional intelligence, but cultural intelligence is a collection of emotional intelligence. So here's a clue on if you are unfairly judging people. If you're never uncomfortable in a cross-cultural situation, you're likely bad at culture. Because here's how racism works. You're probably a racist. We're all probably racist. It's easier to be a racist than to not. Saying that things like you don't see color or white people are bad, or all those are all racial things. You should be uncomfortable in cross-cultural situations. If you're not, then you're not exposing yourself to the people that you need to expose yourself to. And I'm saying racist, call that whatever you want. Call it classist, call it sexist, any of those things. If you're not familiar with what it's like to be an inner city urban dude and what challenges they go, I promise nobody wants anybody else's problems. So before you put problems on somebody or make their path easy, understand that you likely, if you got to know them, you'd be like, fuck that. I'm lucky I only have cancer, or I'm lucky that I only have, that guy, that person, that lady has it way worse than me. That's almost always the case. Like you think, I've got diabetes and it sucks and it's ruining my life, but I don't have brittle bone disease like this person does.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
But I don't have brittle bone disease like this person does, or I don't have whatever those things are. So you have to find discomfort if you're going to try to make a crazy, it's like the drunkest person in the bar is like, I'm not drunk. Probably the most racist person in the room talks about how they're not a racist. And racism doesn't tolerate sides. It doesn't care left or right. Nobody's got a patent on racism. We all do it. It's hard not to be intolerant. It's hard not to be a bigot. So just understand that.
I would say we all have stereotypes. Say stereotypes. Because to me, racism is something where it's like you deep-seated hatred for somebody because of what they are and what they, so stereotypes are, so I agree with you there that we all have stereotypes.
Yeah.
All of us, every single one of us. And the fact that we try to eliminate the fact that we have them is bad. And I mean that. No, we have to accept the fact that our differences are differences. For sure. And it's up to us to step outside our comfort zone. First trip to Afghanistan, goat ball soup. My story I tell everyone. We were, SF guys are taught to build rapport, so I had to do this. But I think I would have done this even beforehand. But I get given this bowl of goat ball soup, and as I'm eating it, I'm like, there's no goat balls in this. I don't understand it. Get to the bottom, there is one ball. All the friggin' Afghanis start cheering because it's all like, who gets the ball? That's the person who's got the luckiest night. He got the ball. And they're staring at me. And I realize they're waiting for me to eat it. Now, what could I do? I could say, hey, guys, I'm not putting a goat ball in my mouth. I'm not doing that, which is what I wanted to do. But what would I be message would I be sending them? What rapport would I be, damaging that I'm going to have to try to rebuild? What am I telling them about their culture in their own country? Instead, I put it in my mouth. I smiled. I bit down on it. They all cheered and laughed. And the next day, every single one of them asked me why I put the goat ball in my mouth. Every single one of them. Do that. There's no such thing as goat ball soup. And the one guy goes, the fact that you did it, he goes, makes you a joke. And like you're the guy. You're the guy. Yeah. Thank you for doing that. And it was like, there was so much built in that one act. Mm-hmm. And I was uncomfortable. I didn't want to do it. Yeah. For years, I didn't want to talk about it because I won't eat Rocky Mountain spotted oysters. They're balls. I won't do that. But if it turned around, I had to do it to build a rapport with somebody to get them to realize that, yes, we're different, but I don't judge you for that. And if I do have judgments, they're not judgments that are going to be so out in the open that I think less of you. That's the thing. Everyone in America knows what I'm talking about because every single person talks about class systems in America and the rich 1% who don't understand what it's like for the working class. That's what I'm talking about. They don't understand. The rich don't understand. They're not evil, guys. They have a lot of money. They want to keep it. That's common sense. I would want to keep all my money too. I'm middle class. I want to keep my money. Rich people want to keep their money. They don't understand what it's like for the middle class because they're not there. Just like the middle class don't understand what it's like to be a minority in America. So everybody that says, well, there's, Black Lives Matter. They just don't understand. It's like, no, dude, you don't understand what it's like to be a young black male in Chicago driving down the street who has to worry about being pulled over just because he's black. That is something that is a real thing, whether you want to admit it or not. It's real. And you don't understand that. And that's okay. You don't understand that. But just admit that you don't understand that rather than getting into an argument over what's right or wrong. Well, just listen to authority. How about just listen to what they're saying is the issue and at least empathize with them, because you can't friggin' identify. But empathy is something that I think is – so one thing I think I left the military learning the most was I have to empathize with people who are different than me.
Yeah.
Because I can't identify with them. I don't understand. But that's okay. Empathy will at least get me in the door of realizing that, hey, look, I don't know what you're going through, but I understand it's bothering you.
Yeah.
And that's not touching. That's just being a human being.
Yeah, the empathy piece, if you can extend empathy, even like just by saying, I don't have any under a clue what it is like to be you, whatever that person is.
Mm-hmm.
And then just spend time in that person's moment in their life. Like, what's good, what's bad, what's hard, what's impossible? What do you wish you could change? What are you trying to change? You would learn so much more about that person, gain a lot more trust, and gain a lot more understanding by having that exchange rather than just simply because our country is so divided, right? Like we have this whole thing right now with Cavanaugh being looked at. What's that?
It's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah, I know it's
this
terrible.
is divided. This is the worst I've seen it in my entire life. And
yeah,
I've only been alive since '77. I equate it to this must have been what it was like in the '60s during the race wars, race riots.
It's really crazy. We have the Cavanaugh hearings to see if he's going to be Supreme Court justice, and it's almost as if it doesn't.
Donald Trump.
Yeah, and
Very Simpsons episode, bro. We're a Simpsons episode.
It's crazy. No, it is. I mean, it's so problematic. And I'm checked the president part. That's pretty easy to simple. But the point about the Cavanaugh thing is it doesn't matter what his politics or his beliefs are. He is a player in a game that's bigger. And not that there's like the deep state thing. What I'm saying is that it's a left-right struggle, and the left is going to lose this fight. But they're going to fight as hard as they can and make it impossible so that it's just further dividing, and the right is going to oblige them by being dicks right back. So instead of saying, hey, this guy.
I would argue that.
What's that?
If you don't mind, I would argue that the left is going to lose.
Oh, they'll lose this particular fight.
The right runs the risk of being so hard-lined and so we're right no matter what, that you lose that middle where the people, and those people will eventually be like, well, at least I'd rather be with the people who don't want to destroy or hardline everything rather than, because people who are in the middle love a liberal, love a diehard liberal because they're easily manipulated. And that's not me being against liberals. That's just a thing. So they would side with them in a hard line between the Nazis and the communists. Who did America choose? We choose the communists, the liberals, because that was easier for us to understand and identify with than these people who were just. So I think, you're right. You might be right. But I think both sides, the fact that we have these right and left and you can only be on one side or the other, is part of our problem.
And I'm not trying to say that one side's going to, in this particular fight, Cavanaugh will get approved if the right chooses to do it because it's within their power. But yeah, what we're really doing is we're just, we're further pulling apart from the middle. And one of the things that makes our country so incredible is that we balance three distinct kinds of freedom, and we're able to transition power left, right, doesn't matter, because we're able to kind of balance in the middle on these things. And the less that we can get to know the folks and rally the folks in the middle, the more that we're trying as hard as we can to be like other countries that don't have these things, that where no one's got time or safety to make tacos at 2 a.m. I can get tacos whenever I want in California, all the time, because we've got this incredible stability and we can work on higher level problems like no tacos at 2 a.m. And I'm using tacos to illustrate the point. But if you go to Germany, you're not going to.
You ever ran out of water?
Yeah, right. I take clean water all the time, completely potable, usable water, and I dump it down a drain or I crap in it.
Right.
It's so luxurious.
It's that people don't realize how much of a entitlement that is in our country.
Yeah. Yeah.
You take that away and you look at the fabric of the American culture would fall apart. Look at what happened in New Orleans after the hurricane. Yeah. That place went from a very cultured, very deep rooted in their history group of people that were fun to be around to within 12 hours evolving into frigging like cult and ritualistic and clan mentality. And they were killing each other inside you could look at what happened inside the big stadium And you can look at it as a microcosm of the human condition and what happens when you take away the things that people are expecting to have all the time. And that's what could happen if something like the power went out for 30 days or that the clean water all got shut off.
Boy.
And that's not something that we have a big risk of, but can you imagine
Yeah.
what happened in LA? Look at the riots back in the 90s.
Yeah.
That was over cops. No one likes being picked on by a cop, but that got to that point. Can you imagine what would happen in that city with those kind of personalities if basic life, like water and power completely shut off?
Yeah. No, these are the things, again, we've got it great. And you can say, well, we should be like Denmark, but you know what Denmark doesn't have our diversity. It's a very complex problem set that we have. Like the problem with diversity is it's the opposite of unity. So we've got all these different points of view and different goals and different styles and cultures. And it's supposed to be uncomfortable. Again, it's right back to the cultural thing. You have to be uncomfortable if you're learning how to get along. And that means that you've got to know a gay person. You've got to know a white dude. You got to know a black lady. And you've got to be able to say, I can't understand what it's like to be you, but I'm interested in learning. And those
I'm not interested. I at least understand that I'm not going to judge you for those differences because I'm just as different as a white male in America.
Yeah.
I tell my son all the time, son, you won the lottery of life in the world. You are a white male who was born in the United States. So for the rest of your life, always remember that no matter how bad you have it, you were a winner the second you crawled out. You won the lottery of life the second you crawled out. So don't ever let any other people's complaints about things lead you to tell them that they're wrong.
Yeah.
Because you were right from the beginning. And it doesn't matter. Everyone does the whole white males are now the minority. No, we're not. We're not. I never got picked on by anyone. I'd never get that weird. My beard is glorious. My tattoos are great. I'd never get judged for who I am. Maybe a liberal hates me because I'm such a diehard American and I openly claim to have killed bad guys. They hate me. I don't care. I did it for them just as much as I did it for the people who support what I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand that I have a certain personality type that only fits what I did. And that I should not be the guy making judgment calls on cultural ideas because I'm I'm liberal myself in the social thought process. I don't care about gay or black. I'm very open to mind about that, but I know that I have a military mindset. So I tell people all the time that you'd be a great president. I'm like, no, I wouldn't. I'd be the worst president. Yeah, you want to see what someone like me would be. Look at the movie The Siege with Denzel Washington. And I mean, he said, what's his face says in there? Don't send me and don't put Marshall on. Don't send me in.
Yeah.
Broadsword. I'm not a scalpel. And I know that about myself.
Yeah.
So I understand that I need people like President Obama up there who everything he does, I was like, why? But I understand that we need the balance.
We need the balance.
Compromise is what got us to be the country we were.
Yeah.
Everyone liked the 16th Amendment? No. Think everyone liked the 24th Amendment? No. Half of the people didn't like it. But we compromised, or at least we accepted what was changing. Nowadays, I will not accept this. I'm not my president. But yes, it is your president.
Yes, it is your president.
I didn't vote for him. I voted for him, and I don't like him half the time. But he is my president. This is the world we live in. Compromise is important. Stop being so damn hard-headed and realize you're not always right. You're right, more likely wrong than you are right, and that's okay.
Yeah. And one thing we learned about freedom is it requires tolerance, and you get to be whatever that thing is, as long as you're not, hurting kids. We're not talking about that, but you get to even be a racist, you get to be those things because that's what freedom is about. Like if you're going to take care of your stuff and pay your share of the taxes or anything else, then you get to be a son of a bitch. You just get to do it. And, it ain't fun or easy. I wanted to change gears because I don't want to get too preachy, and I know the audience is tolerating it. But I'm
political, and I don't like getting political.
Yeah,
I'm a terrible politician.
Well, I would never be president because you guys be like, that guy has made so many bad decisions. So I'm glad to step down and do something else. But
you and every other president, right?
Yeah, yeah. At least I can admit it. Like, hey, I'm not qualified for that job, and I'm disqualified for that job. So two different ways. So let me ask you this: one of the things I've been talking to folks about is females in combat. And I'll tell you just my position up front. I have seen females in combat. I've seen 100, maybe 20-pound female work a Modus, which is a giant gun. That's a man-sized gun, and I'm saying that on purpose. She rocked it up on the turret, and she was ready, and she stood in harm's way with a big piece of machinery. And so I know women can be in combat, but I also have not done what you've done. I also frankly, don't care if the person's transgendered, if they're either a pro or trying to become a pro, and they can go out and do their job, then come on, let's do it. And you've been in a Ranger regiment, so what are your thoughts? You've seen the world in a different way than I have.
Well, I've also had Colonel Sherman, who was the guy that went to the Pentagon and had a sex change, as my battalion commander in 3rd Group.
Okay, there you go.
Here's the thing: I'm gonna win some friggin' kudos, and I'm gonna get people to hate me at the same time. But try to like I said, try to look at it from my point of view and from the point of view of common sense. First of all, women in combat. For the entire span of the world, last week on my show, I did a show on women who were great warriors in combat, women who overthrew countries and leaders. That's great. It's perfect. That can happen. Women should be allowed to fight if they want to, and they can do it. Unfortunately, America is not prepared to look at women coming home in body bags. It's happened, but it's always a bigger tragedy to the American people than if a guy comes home in a body bag. And for that alone, we still have some growing to do with women as far as what we're willing to accept. We're not quite the Israelis where we accept it. We don't have Dr. Ruth Westheimer. I want to get there. I want the women, but we also have to, in my job, I don't support it because I can't go to Afghanistan with a female Green Beret and expect that friggin' local militia to follow me because their culture doesn't allow it. You've got to be able to weigh the culture that you're at. Ranger Battalion, if a woman can carry the Mongoose and fight and do all that stuff, great. But in the aspect of what Special Forces does, specifically the intercultural stuff Special Forces does, it could be a danger, and you have to keep that into accountability. Transgender.
Yeah.
I have nothing against transgender. I do not agree they should be in the military. The reason why is this. If you have type 1 diabetes, you cannot join the military. Why? You cannot join the military because of two things. One is because you are on a medication that is already a life-needed medication to keep you stable. If you go into combat and they have to pay for you you could die if you run out. And also the government's taking on a huge amount of money. People in the NFL don't get in if they have one leg because it's a huge liability, right? Financial and medical. When you are a transgender, because you are choosing to go against what your body has been born as, you have to have hormone therapy. You have to be taken care of a certain way medically. That medical care is requirement for you to stay stable. And anyone that's I've had PTSD, guys. When hormones go bad, shit goes wrong. All right. Women have menstrual cycles. My wife will tell you, 4 days a month, I would not be able to fight in combat because I'd be too friggin' off the wall. She says that. That's not me. But this is something that's real. Now you have the hormone therapies that they have to be on because they don't just automatically change into women or men. They have to stay on those hormone therapies. If they go off them, bad stuff happens. It's a medical liability. And that's the only reason why. Not because I don't think they should be able to serve, but because I think that the medical issue to make a social norm is not, if you're not going to let people with diabetes or people with HIV or people with congenital heart defects join the military because they really want to, then I'm sorry. You shouldn't be allowed to join if you have a medical need that is beyond the actual ability for the government to guarantee you safety all the time. I got medically retired because I couldn't be medically cared for and do my job. They have too many medical needs. It's just a medical thing. It's literally doesn't make sense on paper. I have to look at it from a critical point of view. Although I will say that I have no problem with gays openly serving in the military because I'd rather have a gay guy with me next to me in a foxhole than a coward. And I'm big enough to know that they've been there all this time.
Yeah.
I mean, Alexander the Great, greatest freaking conqueror in the world's history. Gay has nothing to do with whether you can fight or not. If you're in a shower worried about if a guy's looking at your butt, you are way too friggin' arrogant. There ain't nobody looking at your fat ass in the shower. You ain't that good looking. They know it. That's why they ain't saying anything to you. Maybe that's your problem. But yeah, transgender, I just can't get behind it only because of those reasons. It has nothing to do with me thinking they're weird or they shouldn't be allowed to. It's strictly a monetary and a combat effectiveness thing.
And I guess, yeah,
you can go after them.
To be fair, you have to understand that a lot of times when you're serving, you are so far removed from any kind of resources. It's very, very hard to properly account for a prescription. You're supposed to bring, if you need something constantly, like let's say you've got some kind of, I don't know. So some kind of, let's say you're on cholesterol medicine, nice and harmless. It's going to take statins. You have to have a 6-month supply with you. And not all pills stay good for that long, but that's the standard. Like, you're going to bring enough to withstand a long stretch without it, because nobody can guarantee that you'll get it. Will you get it? Sure.
Lance Armstrong fails the entry-level medical exam.
Yeah.
The man who won the Tour de France, whether on steroids or not, all those times, fails the entry-level exam because of his condition. It's something that it's not a right to serve in the military. It's a privilege to have the ability to, and they have to keep it to where it's the best force in the world, not the most socially acceptable force. Where our job is to kill massive amounts of enemy forces to support Americans, wants and desires, good or bad. It's not an experiment. It's not something that's meant to be a testing ground for stuff. It's a very serious job that, unfortunately, for medical reasons, not social reasons, it just doesn't fit into that process. And therefore, I just have to say that I don't. Now, if they turned around and I was in and they said it will happen, and they did, I would not go out there and say, well, I'm not going to serve with this person. I would never do that. I would just say to that person, be advised, your health is on you.
Let me challenge you a little bit.
You wanted to serve and couldn't join. You're here.
I'm going to challenge you a
the favor
little bit.
of making sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it is a privilege to serve. You will do volunteer, but once you're in and you're a female, we both know that the military favors certain jobs over others, and if those jobs aren't afforded to women, then that goes against who we are and what we do, though, also. So, like, we have this thing where infantry officers get promoted ahead of other officers. If you, like, why couldn't a female be a tanker? Why couldn't a female...
Well, that's I'll challenge it back. That's an unfair assessment because each officer corps and each job has its own amount of promotions they can give. It just so happens that infantry seems to get promoted more because there's more of them, because that is the actual ground force of the military. If you're not infantry, you're there to support them in one way or the other. You know that, I know that. Even special forces is meant to support the main infantry force. So there's just more of them.
Right.
Basically,
but if you're not part of that population, then you're eliminated from half of the promotions. So, I know. I agree. I just don't think America's ready for it. I don't think America's ready to see women. I don't care. Yeah.
I don't think America is ready to see women come home at the numbers that they've seen guys come home at.
Okay, and then is that a fair characterization?
Out in this country over Jessica Lynch.
Yeah, no, I mean it was a big deal.
There were 12 people that died in that convoy that never got their names in the paper.
Yeah,
and I'm not disparaging her, but I'm saying that she was the focus because she was a female.
Right. But also, like, that female that got hauled into a Connex and raped for weeks on end on Baghdad, no one even knows her name. So those things happen.
Want to hear that.
Right. But let me ask you this next. I'm going to continue to push back, not to be a dick, but just to understand better. But
go ahead.
How do you know when America's ready? I mean, we're not ready for a lot of things.
I don't have that answer.
Yeah.
I don't have that answer. I will concede that I don't know when, and I think that it needs to happen probably sooner than later. Mm-hmm. And America has always been a country that's always said it's not ready for change, but then when change comes, it adjusts.
Right.
But we just talked here about how America is really in a bad way polarized right now. And it's hard for us to accept change that doesn't affect us. Like, what does it affect me if there's policemen who are held accountable for pulling over black people? It doesn't affect Jeff Adamec.
Right.
But yet there are people just like me in my same, white male in America who make it such their mission to go out there and fight the powers that are, talking about this stuff. It's like, why? It doesn't affect you. Let them get what they need because it affects them. With that going on, it's unfortunate, but I can't see. I think it's going to have to be forced upon us. Maybe we need to be invaded and everyone has to pick up arms like Russia did during World War II for us to accept it, because they didn't have any problem putting guns in women's hands. And to this day, they don't let women serve in combat forces. But at the time they did.
Are we overly concerned about a big state-on-state war? I mean, we haven't seen that kind of activity in generations.
No, I don't think we're that kind of. I think we're too evolved for that.
Okay.
I think you would see more of a disillusion. I think right now, if the South wanted to secede from the government, I think that the government would let them. I don't think we're at the same place where there would be someone who's like, no, we're going to hold the union together.
Yeah.
If California wanted to secede, they would. I think that federally, we are so federally controlled that it's really a bad idea for any country, any state to do that, because they lose all that federal money that they love. But I don't think we have the same kind of, I guess, maybe the guts for bloodshed that we did. Not that we didn't back then, but we were willing to see. Look at the Civil War, the death and carnage, and we kept on and kept on and kept on. The South would have kept fighting if Lee hadn't surrendered, no matter what Sherman did. But that stuff today doesn't seem like it would happen in America.
Yeah.
I think that the only way it would happen is if we were invaded by another country. I think it's like a Red Dawn situation. And I don't think that's going to happen either. China can just control us financially if they wanted to. They don't need to send troops here.
Well, we're also a good bet. We're also a good financial bet. And we are a great consuming nation. And we create a lot of things that make other lives. It's a different time. And sure, at some point there'll be some kind of conflict, but it's hard to know what it's going to be and how to prepare for it. Like I saw a picture the other day of a Russian tank being airdropped with like 7 parachutes on it. And I'm like, yeah, God bless. Like, how are you going to pull that off? How many tanks does it take to fall out of the back of an airplane? How did you get them through, our defense systems? And then how many are the tankers in the tank? Or are they paratrooping in? I think it's so hard to airdrop tanks. Like, it's just silly, but people are worried about it.
I hope they're smart enough to realize that I was on a team that with 12 special forces guys defeated an Iraqi tank regiment in the Battle of Adamec Pass. We don't need to have a bunch of people to defeat the tanks. Tanks are not what they used to be in World War II. I would be more impressed if they were able to globally move large aircraft without refueling worldwide. That would scare me more than them airdropping tanks. I mean, I don't think you'll ever see another massive parachute jump in combat ever again. I think the ones we did in the past war were kind of shows of force. I was on the ground for one of them, for God's sakes, in Iraq.
You're not supposed to say that.
Oh no, everyone knows. It's in the book, but I didn't write it.
It's like
we were at Ass West.
I know some group guys too. Like, yeah, we were on the airfield. We had already secured it in Afghanistan. We were drinking beers and wearing flip flops when the army was jumping into combat. It's like
Dr. Pepper. But yeah, we were there. I was pulling the far end security during. I had some colonel walk up to me, ask me which way the enemy was. I said 500 miles to the south, sir.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Where's the enemy? Like, we don't know. Not anywhere near here. It's
I just think that there's things like that I don't think we have to worry about anymore. I think that nuclear war is always going to be a threat as long as there's nuclear weapons out there. North Korea scares the hell out of me. I won't lie to you. I think that guy's a maniac. And people who are politicians don't scare me. Their political moves will always trump their mania. But someone like him, a totalitarian dictator who's a maniac.
Yeah.
He reminds me of what it would be like if Saddam's kids had taken over in Iraq, Hussein Qusay, these kids who grew up as psychopaths, and he scares me. And that's the one I think is the most big. It's one of these small countries that have a nuclear threat that are just working towards Iran, Korea, Venezuela, these countries that have a bone to pick with us just because of who we are, that have the technology and the backing, and the Chinese and the Soviets, or the Chinese and the Russians looking the other way. They're waiting for someone to pick a fight with us so they can come in and be the heroes. Don't doubt it. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I like to think that if we were smart about how we did our foreign policy and we wanted to use the army, because when I say army, I mean the military, but it's easy for a president to be the most powerful person in the world and go, well, I got this military sitting there. We're paying so much money. Let's use it. And if we made it even more expensive, like anybody who deploys automatically has a retirement of $50,000 a year funded by the people, we would go to a lot less places. Automatic, like the moment you show up, and it only gets more per deployment, because it's too easy to send these $1 trillion forces in with no end state, because tankers train to be tankers and go to a fight where there's no tanks. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Well, Congress used to be one of the triads of power in the United States, and now it is just it's the circus. It's it's where people will go to watch everyone fight with each other.
Yeah.
Because of that, I think that they don't check on like presidential, powers and sending people all over the place. And they're too busy fighting with each other over who gets to, have a longer term or a bigger paycheck.
Right.
I'm not going to claim it to know how we should fix America, but I do think we should start with how our government is allowed to just do whatever, and everyone just doesn't hold it accountable.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, listen, everybody. This is Jeff. Oh, I wanted to ask you tell me about your podcast before we get going. I want to make sure everybody can go check you out.
Changing Hearts and Minds is part of my one that I actually hosted on the solo host on is Changing Hearts and Minds. It's part of the Change Your POV podcast network. And my show is the Special Forces look at the world and basically military history. There are 5 shows on the Change Your POV podcast network. So you have to look at Change Your POV on like Apple to find it. But each day of the week, a different show gets released in the same RSS feed.
Okay.
Keeps us cost down because we're veterans. We ain't got a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So we release a show every day. There are two guys that were, there's a Marine, Eddie Lazary, the guy who founded the thing, he was in first cav. He's got a BA in friggin' business, and he knows a whole bunch of shit. We've got a guy who's a psychologist who's on the show. And we've got a guy who's a non-veteran who does a lot of stuff about outdoors and called Neophyte in the Woods. So it's about doing outdoor things like hunting. And I'm just the wild card. I'm the guy that goes on there and does stuff like what we're doing. Runs his mouth about stuff he probably doesn't know about. But I also do a lot about military history because that was what I wanted to do when I got out. I wanted to be a history teacher, but they just don't let people with PTSD in front of high school kids. I think it might be right. I think it might be a good answer because I've got one teenager at home who could drive me nuts. But so I do a lot of it's on military history. I've done things on Band of Brothers, and I talk about getting past transition and realizing that being a warrior is not about wearing a uniform. Too many guys are killing themselves and having bad, lives after they get out because they can't let go of that and think that they're not the same person they were. You're the same person you were. It's about how you live your life, not about anything else like that. So that's what I try to do. It's like I'm kind of, if you want to find something that's just fun and learn a little bit about something or me lie about who was right, Sherman or, Grant, you can come to my show. I have an opinion about everything. So
Sherman or Grant. Yeah. Yeah. If you had taken the,
they were both right to answer though.
That's the answer. Hey, Sherman was awesome at what he did. He, it's those guys who have that uncommon ability, Marshall, who's like, I can just figure all this other stuff out. You guys got to go do the fighting, but I'll make sure you have every single thing you need. It'll be well planned and provisioned. And it's just a miracle that these guys seem to find their way.
Nimitz is another one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's all big picture stuff. And the Navy, he made our Navy, the world's so powerful that we don't even have to fight. Navy's where you go if you don't want to fight.
Yeah, everybody else is giving up their Navy. They're like, you know what? We'll maybe have a boat or two, but can you imagine if we had a big naval battle and people started sinking $1 trillion ships? Like it's just
I can't because I don't think they could sink our ships. I mean, in Yemen, they tried to sink one with a bomb. It blew a giant hole in the side. It didn't even sink. I think then was when the world was like, yeah, the U.S. Navy.
Yeah.
They own the seas. That's great.
Let's quit spending money there, maybe, and spend it on something else. Well, listen, Jeff is an awesome guy. We're going to have him on. We're going to have to do some co-hosting with me here, and we're just going to keep on going. I hope you guys all enjoy getting to know him a little bit. He has opinions, and he's not afraid to say them, but he's also not afraid to say, hey, I could be wrong on this. It wouldn't be the first time both of us were wrong. Probably in the same damn show, we've probably been wrong tonight. So
I'm most probably wrong. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Probably everything I said in this show is probably wrong. So
I'm trying to be wronger than you. That's my goal is, can I be more wrong? But seriously, thank you for coming on. It's cool to have other veterans come on and talk about, just give us all some perspective because I've got a lot of experiences you do, and we probably agree on half or maybe 60% of what we think and see. But we have the ability to have these conversations, and even if they're a little uncomfortable at times, which I don't think we did, but it's all right because we can all learn to tolerate a little bit more things and work on figuring out how, where do we agree? Okay, we agree here. Well, then let's hang out here and have a good time and talk. So I appreciate you coming on. Anything you want to say in closing? I
want to reach out and tell you how much I appreciate you having me on, and it's been fun, man. I had a great time. It's nice to be on a show with someone that's actually a professional at podcasting, not some guy that just does it 10 hours a week like I do to push buttons and maybe get some friggin' other veterans to listen to my show and improve their lives. It's really all I care about. But I look up to you. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm really had a great time on the show. So thanks a lot, man.
Yeah. And I guess we should also say that I'm going to be on Jeff's show. We actually just recorded back-to-back episodes. Mine will probably be up in about 3 weeks. Jeff's will be up, whenever. But if you want to hear the other half of the conversation, we talk about different stuff altogether, but there is another one. So definitely get over to Jeff's show and check it out. And just in general, support what Jeff does because, we're all out here trying to tell our stories in our own way. And there's some incredible things on it. I love the history things. I was listening to, which one was it earlier today? And it was really good. It was well thought out, and it's kind of it's just one of those things where we should grab a history guy that excites you and have him come on to Break It Down show, and then talk to them and just go from there because this is what it's all about, man. Telling stories.
Yeah, right on.